Book 1, the Book of Beginnings, Canto 5, the Yoga of the King, the Yoga of the Spirit's freedom and greatness. This knowledge first he had of time-born men. This knowledge refers to the secret knowledge that amongst all men, all people born in time, it is Ashwapati who had this knowledge first. This knowledge first he had of time-born men, admitted through a curtain of bright mind that hangs between our thoughts and absolute sight. He found the occult cave, the mystic door, near to the well of vision in the soul. So there is a curtain of bright mind that hangs between our thoughts and absolute sight. And Ashwapati found the occult cave and the mystic door, which was near to the well of vision in the soul's vision, and entered where the wings of glory brood in the silent space where all is forever known. Indifferent to doubt and to belief, avid of the naked real's single shock, he shore the cord of mind that ties the earth heart and cast away the yoke of matter's law. The body's rules bound not the spirit's powers. When life had stopped its beats, death broke not in. He dared to live when breath and thought were still. This is a very important autobiographical line. Obviously, Sri Aurobindo has done that. And you know that in the past we've read many attempts of yogis who have been able to live without breathing and thinking. So, for him to have got to this next stage of yoga, the yoga of the king, the yoga of the spirit's freedom, here Ashwapati tears the cord of mind. That you can imagine what that means. Completely, you see the words they've used. He shore the cord of mind that ties the earth heart and cast away the yoke of matter's law. So matter's law then became no longer operational. He was able to go beyond, above matter's law, which we are all bound by. When life had stopped its beats, death broke not in. So when life itself had stopped its beats, death did not come in. You can just imagine what mastery he had. When life had stopped its beats, death broke not in. He dared to live when breath and thought was still. Now, we quickly declare people dead when they stop breathing. So what would we do if we saw someone like this? So no thought, no mind, and no breath. So he dared to live when breath and thought were still. Thus could he step into that magic place which few can even glimpse with hurried glance, lifted for a moment from mind's labored works and the poverty of nature's earthly sight. All that the gods have learned is there self-known. There, in this place where he stepped into, he dared to live, and thus could he step into this magic place, which few even glimpse, and all that the gods have learnt is there self-known. There in a hidden chamber, closed and mute, are kept the record graphs of the cosmic scribe. So here are where all the records are kept, everything of the cosmic scribe. You can imagine what plane that Tripati must have gone into. So there in a hidden chamber closed and mute are kept the record graphs of the cosmic scribe, and there the tables of the sacred law. There is the book of being's index page. The text and glossary of the Vedic truth are there. The rhythms and meters of the stars, significant of the movements of our fate. The symbol powers of number and form, and the secret code of the history of the world, and nature's correspondence with the soul are written in the mystic heart of life. So there is a mention where Sri Aurobindo mentions in some letter that what I have not even written or spoken about 1/10 of what I know. So all his 30 volumes and 33 volumes and whatever Sri Aurobindo has described, he says, what I know is vast. I've only been able to transcribe or write down a very small part of it. So, obviously, if we can go into this realm, everything is known. Are written in the mystic heart of life, in the glow of the Spirit's room of memories. He could recover the luminous marginal notes, dotting with light the crabbed ambiguous scroll, rescue the preamble and the saving clause of the dark agreement by which all is ruled, that rises from material nature's sleep to clothe the everlasting in new shapes. He could reread now and interpret new its strange symbol letters, scattered abstruse signs, resolve its oracle and its paradox, its riddling phrases and its blindfold terms, the deep oxymoron of its truths repliques, and recognize as a just necessity its hard conditions for the mighty work. What does this mean? He went into this space and there he saw the dark agreement that was made between material nature's sleep and the everlasting to clothe the everlasting in new shapes. And there he could read and interpret new and strange symbol letters, scattered abstruse signs, resolve the oracle and its paradox, its riddling phrases and its blindfold terms, the deep oxymoron of its truths repliques. What does deep oxymoron of its truths repliques mean? Oxymoron is So, of its truths repliques, and recognize as a just necessity its hard conditions for the mighty work. Nature's impossible Herculean toil, only her warlock wisecraft could enforce. So this nature's impossible Herculean toil, only her warlock wisecraft could enforce its law of the opposition of the gods, its list of inseparable contraries. So even this, what nature has taken on to do, is itself such an Herculean task, to oppose the gods, to be contrary to everything that the divine is. It could not have happened unless there was some wise almighty energy guiding it, its law of the opposition of the gods, its list of inseparable contraries, the dumb great mother in her cosmic trance, exploiting for creation's joy and pain, infinity's sanction to the birth of form, accepts indomitably to execute the will to know in an inconscient world, the will to live under a reign of death. So it is the dumb great mother in a cosmic trance who exploits for creation's joy and pain and takes infinity's sanction for the birth of form and acts indomitably to execute the will to know in an inconscious. That's why they call it the Holocaust of the Mother. Creation is the Holocaust because it is the Divine Mother that is consented to enter into matter and completely sacrifice and give of herself so that creation can rise and go back to ultimate source of the Absolute. The dumb great mother in her cosmic trance, exploiting for creation's joy and pain, infinity's sanction to the birth of form, accepts indomitably to execute the will to know in an inconscient world, the will to live under a reign of death, the thirst for rapture in a heart of flesh, and works out through the appearance of a soul by a miraculous birth in plasm and gas, the mystery of God's covenant with the night. Once more was heard in the still cosmic mind the Eternal's promise to his laboring force, inducing the world passion to begin, the cry of birth into mortality, and the opening verse of the tragedy of time. Out of the depths the world's buried secret rose. He read the original ukase kept back in the locked archives of the Spirit script, and saw the signature and fiery seal of wisdom on the dim power's hooded work, and saw the signature and fiery seal of wisdom on the dim power's hooded work, who builds in ignorance the steps of light. A sleeping deity opened deathless eyes. He saw the unshaped thought in soulless forms, new matter pregnant with spiritual sense. Mind, dare the study of the unknowable. Life, its gestation of the golden child. Life, its gestation of the golden child. So life is, the whole of life is in a sense a gestation for the golden child to be born. Supramental, the new consciousness. It's a golden child here refers to the new consciousness that is to be born. He saw the unshaped thought in soulless forms, new matter pregnant with spiritual sense. He didn't see matter dumb and inconscient and dark and ignorant. What did he see when he actually went deep into the heart of the mystery of life and in the world? He saw matter pregnant with spiritual sense. Mind, dare the study of the unknowable. Life, its gestation of the golden child. In the light flooding, thought's blank vacancy, interpreting the universe by soul signs, he read from within the text of the without. In the light flooding thought's blank vacancy, because you remember his own mind was completely silent and blank. interpreting the universe by soul science, he read from within the text of the without. The riddle grew plain and lost its catch obscure. A larger luster lit the mighty page. A purpose mingled with the whims of time. A meaning met the stumbling pace of chance, and fate revealed a chain of seeing will. A conscious wideness filled the old dumb space. In the void he saw throned the omniscience supreme. So in the void he saw throned the omniscience supreme. This is the full description of Sri Aurobindo's yoga through Ashwapati. The yoga of the king specially, he writes, is the most autobiographical exposition of Sri Aurobindo's own sadhana. A will, a hope immense now seized his heart. So Ashwapati, in the previous paragraph you can see, he ends with, he has the vision of the omniscient supreme, and of course this continues the whole vision. A purpose mingled with the whims of time. Last few lines of the previous paragraph. A purpose mingled with the whims of time. A meaning met the stumbling pace of chance, and fate revealed a chain of seeing will. A conscious wideness filled the old dumb space. In the void he saw throned the omniscience supreme. So, and this continues. A will, a hope immense now seized his heart. So when he saw in the void the omniscient supreme, a will, a hope immense now seized his heart, and to discern the superhuman's form, he raised his eyes to unseen spiritual heights, aspiring to bring down a greater world. So Ashwapati is the harbinger and the forerunner, the avatar of the new world. So Ashwapati is aspiring here to bring down a greater world. Aspiring to bring down a greater world. So this is again reminiscent of Sri Aurobindo's own vision and mission on earth. So he raised his eyes to unseen spiritual heights, aspiring to bring down a greater world. The glory he had glimpsed must be his home. A brighter, heavenlier sun must soon illume this dusk room with its dark internal stare. So again, this very great promise that Sri Aurobindo brings often through Savitri. Now in the words of Ashwapati, his faith and clear vision that soon a brighter, heavenlier sun must soon illumine earth's dusk room. At the moment, earth is like a dusk, kind of just before night. This dusk room with its dark internal stare. The infant soul in its small nursery school, mid objects meant for a lesson hardly learnt, outgrow its early grammar of intellect and its imitation of earth nature's art, its earthly dialect to God language change. In living symbols, study reality and learn the logic of the infinite. So man is the infant soul which is in the small nursery school right now, mid objects meant for a lesson hardly learned, outgrow its early grammar of intellect. So the intellect is here, what should I say? compared to learning alphabets in school, in early nursery school. So the infant soul in its small nursery school, mid objects meant for a lesson hardly learned, outgrow its early grammar of intellect and its imitation of earth nature's art, its earthly dialect to God language change. In living symbols, study reality and learn the logic of the infinite. The ideal must be nature's common truth, the body illumined with the indwelling God, the heart and mind feel one with all that is, identity. A conscious soul live in a conscious world. So this is the aim and the direction in which earthly evolution is moving, and Ashwapati here sees that when he raises his eyes to unseen spiritual heights, and with his great aspiration to bring down a greater world, he has this glimpse that the earth is right now like a nursery school, but a nursery school in half dusk, that is, not even full light. And here, men and women and all creatures are, the intellect is the early grammar that it's learning. And it must outgrow all this. And then what happens? And learn the logic of the infinite. The ideal must be nature's common truth. The body illumined, not right now, the body is illumined by what? It's disillumined at the moment with the ego. The body must instead get illumined with the indwelling God. The psychic being and the psychic presence must rule the physical nature. So the body illumined with the indwelling God, the heart and mind feel one with all that is. A conscious soul. What are we at the moment? Unconscious soul. Why? Because we are not aware of our soul. We are totally immersed in the outer nature of our physical, mental, vital, desire soul. So, what we need, what we will become is what Ashwapati is foreseeing here. A conscious soul live in a conscious world. As through a mist, a sovereign peak is seen, the greatness of the eternal spirit appeared. As through a mist a sovereign peak is seen, in the same way, the greatness of the eternal spirit appeared, exiled in a fragmented universe, amid half semblances of diviner things. These now could serve no more his regal turn. The immortal's bride refused the doom to live. A miser of the scanty bargain made between our littleness and bounded hopes and the compassionate infinitudes. His height repelled the lowness of earth state. Whose height? Ashwapati's height repelled the lowness of earth state, a wideness discontented with its frame, resiled from poor ascent to nature's terms, the harsh contract spurned, and the diminished lease. Only beginnings are accomplished here. Our base's matter seems alone complete, an absolute machine without a soul, or all seems a misfit of half ideas, or we saddle with the vice of earthly form, a hurried imperfect glimpse of heavenly things, guesses and travesties of celestial types. Here chaos sorts itself into a world, a brief formation drifting in the void, apings of knowledge, unfinished arcs of power, flamings of beauty into earthly shapes, love's broken reflexes of unity swim, fragment mirrorings of a floating sun. A packed assemblage of crude tentative lives are pieced into a tessellated whole. There is no perfect answer to our hopes. There are blind, voiceless doors that have no key. Thought climbs in vain and brings a borrowed light. So thought itself climbs in vain and brings a borrowed light from somewhere else. So this is again a description of the present earthly state that Ashwapati sees, and he completely refuses to accept this particular state as a final state. He sees this only as a work in progress. That you see, his height repelled the lowness of earth state, a wideness discontented with its frame, and so on. Or we saddled with the vice of earthly form, a hurried, imperfect glimpse of heavenly things, guesses and travesties of celestial types. Here means on earth. Chaos sorts itself into a world, a brief formation drifting in the void. Apings of knowledge, unfinished arcs of power, flamings of beauty into earthly shapes. Love's broken reflexes of unity swim, fragment mirrorings of a floating sun. A packed assemblage of crude tentative lives are pieced into a tessellated whole. There is no perfect answer to our hopes. There are blind, voiceless doors that have no key. Thought climbs in vain and brings a borrowed light, cheated by counterfeits, sold to us in life's mart. Our hearts clutch at a forfeited heavenly bliss. There is provender for the mind's satiety. There are thrills of the flesh, but not the soul's desire. Here even the highest rapture time can give is a mimicry of ungrasped beatitudes. A mutilated statue of ecstasy here on earth, even the highest rapture that time in the world that can bring us is a mimicry of ungrasped beatitude, mimicry, a mutilated statue of ecstasy, a wounded happiness that cannot live. You know that joy on earth is ephemeral. After a while it changes. Nothing ever stays permanent. We can't hold that bliss either in our own body or in our lives or in our relationships or in our consciousness for long. So, a wounded happiness that cannot live, a brief felicity of mind or sense, thrown by the world power to her body slave, or a simulacrum of enforced delight in the seraglios of ignorance. For all we have acquired soon loses worth, an old disvalued credit in time's bank. Imperfections check drawn on the inconscient. So all that we have acquired soon loses worth, like an old disvalued credit in time's bank. Imperfections check drawn on the inconscient. Very interesting imagery of how, the monetary, we draw our checks, but here the check is the imperfections check drawn from the inconscient. Inconscient is that is unconscious and dark. Imperfections check drawn on the inconscient, and in consequence dogs every effort made. And chaos waits on every cosmos formed. Now that's very important. And chaos waits on every cosmos formed. Again, a sense of the pralaya, that everything that is formed is soon, nothing is permanent. It seems to be destroyed and go back to chaos. And you see, that's why there is this sense of what is the purpose of life? It seems to be hopeless, because there seems to be nothing that can really be permanent and stable. There is this instability because of the very instability of man's consciousness that is steeped in the inconscience. And until that inconscience is transformed to consciousness, until, like he said, that time and the world reveals its hidden deity, the inner presence, the divine presence, and matter begins to reveal the divine. Until that happens, this is the state that the world is in and will continue, which, of course, here Ashwapati refuses to accept. And that's why he's aspiring for a greater world and a greater force and consciousness to come down into the earth. So, for all we have acquired soon loses worth. An old disvalued credit in time's bank, imperfections check drawn on the inconscient, and inconsequence dogs every effort made, and chaos waits on every cosmos formed. In each success, a seed of failure lurks, and how true that is in our lives. In each success, a seed of failure lurks. He saw the doubtfulness of all things here, the incertitude of man's proud, confident thought, the transience of the achievements of his force. A thinking being in an unthinking world, an island in the sea of the unknown. He is a smallness trying to be great. He here refers to man, human beings. So that a thinking being in an unthinking world, an island in the sea of the unknown, he is a smallness trying to be great, an animal with some instincts of a god. His life, a story too common to be told. His deeds, a number summing up to naught. His consciousness, a torch lit to be quenched. His hope, a star above a cradle and grave. And now you can see, what does the cradle and grave symbolize? Man's birth and death. So his hope, a star above a cradle and grave. So this is what is the story of human beings and humankind. His life, a story too common to be told. I mean, all our lives sort of more or less have a same arc. So his life and a story too common to be told. His deeds, a number summing up to naught. His consciousness, a torch lit to be quenched. His hope, a star above a cradle and grave. And yet, he says, a greater destiny may be his. For the eternal spirit is his truth. And here is the great hope that Sri Aurobindo keeps implanting into the human consciousness, the seed. This again, he said, and yet, despite everything that we are and that we are dogged by, he says, and yet a greater destiny may be ours. For the eternal spirit is our truth. So, and yet a greater destiny may be his. For the eternal spirit is his truth. He can recreate himself and all around and fashion new the world in which he lives. He, ignorant, is the knower beyond time. He is the self above nature, above fate. So what is he? He, ignorant, because he is ignorant because of the divisive nature of consciousness, because of the inconscient, the ego. He, ignorant, is still the knower beyond time, once he recovers his hid self. He is the self with a capital S, above nature with a capital N, above fate. After that, this was actually the narrator's voice, now it ends. Then his soul retired, now he goes back to Ashwapati from all that he had done. Whose soul? Ashwapati's soul. So now after seeing this and having this vision and this very clear sense, his soul retired from all that he had done. Hushed was the futile din of human toil. Forsaken wheeled the circle of the days. In distance sank the crowded tramp of life. The silence was his sole companion left. Impassive he lived immune from earthly hopes, a figure in the ineffable witness's shrine, pacing the vast cathedral of his thoughts, under its arches dim with infinity, and heavenward brooding of invisible wings. A call was on him from intangible heights, indifferent to the little outpost mind. He dwelt in the wideness of the Eternal's reign. His being now exceeded thinkable space. His boundless thought was neighbor to cosmic sight. A universal light was in his eyes, A golden influx flowed through heart and brain. So obviously this is the experience that Ashwapati is having of the cosmic consciousness, the universal consciousness. So after this, he goes deep within himself, he retires into hushed was the futile din of human toil. And then, when silence was his sole companion, and so on, he dwelt in the wideness of the Eternal's reign. His boundless thought was neighbor to cosmic sight. A universal light was in his eyes. A golden influx, like the force, a golden force flowed through heart and brain. Reminds you of the golden light. A force came down into his mortal limbs, a current from eternal seas of bliss. He felt the invasion and the nameless joy, aware of his occult, omnipotent source, allured by the omniscient ecstasy, a living center of the illimitable, widened to equate with the world's circumference. He turned to his immense spiritual fate. So don't forget, we are reading the Yoga of the King, Yoga of Ashwapati, and this is the second experience he has of he becomes one with the cosmos. His whole consciousness becomes universalized. So there are 3 transformations that Sri Aurobindo speaks of in the Letters of Yoga, in the Life Divine, and several other works, which are very crucial and critical transformation in the integral yoga, in his yoga. So this is the second of that transformation, the transcendent universal self. And then the third, of course, is the spiritual transformation that Ashwapati is going through. So the 3 transformations are what? 1, the psychic transformation, the spiritual transformation, and then the third is the supramental transformation. In the spiritual transformation, there are obviously transitions. There is from the individual to the cosmic to the universal. So the transcendental consciousness is what he is describing here. Now, a universal light was in his eyes, a golden influx flowed through heart and brain, a force came down into his mortal limbs, a current from eternal seas of bliss. He felt the invasion and the nameless joy, aware of his occult omnipotent source. It's very important to note here, unlike traditional yoga, the yoga of the worlds, Shankara's yoga or Patanjali's yoga or all the other yogas, Sri Aurobindo's yoga, it is a descent of force, not the ascent of the human consciousness. So samadhi is not considered as one of the transformations. It is a process. It is after samadhi that Sri Aurobindo's yoga begins. That is what they say. It is when the force descends into the body consciousness, into the mind consciousness, into the heart consciousness, into the cells of the body. That is when there is a transformation of the physical material substance. So here, this is what is being described. When Sri Aurobindo is saying, a universal light was in his eyes, a golden influx flowed through heart and brain. Now what happens in traditional yoga? Our consciousness turns up and goes above. It goes into the Sahasrara chakra, and from there it goes up. So you're in the highest spiritual consciousness when you are in samadhi, in a trance, in what they call a samadhi. But as soon as you come back down into the ordinary world, when you're doing your work and when you're doing your ordinary occupations, you lose that consciousness, because the force hasn't descended into the body and has not transformed the mind, vital and the physical. So Sri Aurobindo's yoga is very different. Therefore, this is the main difference of Sri Aurobindo's yoga and other yogas. That is, that in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, the aim is transformation of the physical body and matter. And therefore, the descent of consciousness is very, very important. Unless the consciousness and this bliss force, which is very difficult to bear. You can't imagine the ecstasy you feel. When this descends into the mind, descends into the different chakras, from the eyes, from the mind, Agnya chakra to the Visuddha chakra, to the heart center, to the bodies, and to the Muladhara center, and then to the inconscient. Until that happens, that golden light came down into my mind, and the grey rooms of mind, sun-touched, became, thy golden light came down into my throat, and all my speech is now attuned divine. Thy golden light came down into my heart, and smiting my life with thy eternity, now has it grown a temple where thou art, and so on. So this poem that Sri Aurobindo wrote is actually the experience of what we are reading. A golden influx flowed through heart and brain. A force came down into his mortal limbs, a current from eternal seas of bliss. He felt the invasion and the nameless joy, aware of his occult, omnipotent source, allured by the omniscient ecstasy, a living center of the illimitable, widened to equate with the world's circumference. He turned to his immense spiritual fate, abandoned on a canvas of torn air, a picture lost in far and fading streaks. The earth-nature summit sank below his feet. He climbed to meet the infinite more above. So it is this. It is the descent that prepares the ascent. The ascent of consciousness still is required, but it is descent. Now he is ascending. He climbs to meet. Okay? Now is the ascent of consciousness. It's the opposite. There is the ascent of consciousness first. So he turned to his immense spiritual fate, abandoned on a canvas of torn air, a picture lost in far and fading streaks. The earth-nature summit sank below his feet. He climbed to meet the infinite more above. The immobile's ocean silence saw him pass, an arrow leaping through eternity, suddenly shot from the tense bow of time, a ray returning to its parent sun. Opponent of that glory of escape, the black inconscient swung its dragon tail, lashing a slumberous infinite by its force into the deep obscurities of form. Death lay beneath him like a gate of sleep. One pointed to the immaculate delight, questing for God as for a splendid prey. He mounted burning like a cone of fire. Who mounted burning like a cone of fire? Ashwapati. Now, to his consciousness, there is an ascent of his consciousness. He is going higher and higher. The force has descended and he is filled with the supreme consciousness in his mind, body and heart, and then his consciousness now is ascending. So, it is due for purification. But after a while, once the consciousness is purified, then the next deeper level of next descent happens for transformation. There are different stages, you can say. So this is a higher stage than the purification. Purification of nature would have happened before this stage. Otherwise, this is a higher stage. This is when his consciousness is getting transformed. So, the immobile's ocean silence saw him pass. An arrow leaping through eternity, suddenly shot from the tense bow of time, a ray returning to its parent sun, opponent of that glory of escape. The black inconscient swung its dragon tail, lashing a slumberous infinite by its force into the deep obscurities of form. Death lay beneath him like a gate of sleep. One pointed to the immaculate delight, questing for God as for a splendid prey. He mounted burning like a cone of fire. To a few is given that God-like rare release. Now, he actually, Ashwapati, in a way, what should I say? When you get triple promotions, he jumped various stages because his consciousness and his yoga and his surrender, it was so deep and so absolute that he could actually move faster than ordinary human beings can. So he reached the stage. That's why he said, to a few is given that godlike rare release. Rare release, please note. Because it has happened for him, he is, it is because of his surrender and his total surrender to the divine, where he has annihilated his ego completely. And he has given himself so utterly that the divine can flood and into him and take him at the same time up. Normally for us, it happens in stages. For him, it has happened like that, So he mounted burning like a cone of fire. To a few is given that godlike rare release. One among many thousands never touched, engrossed in the eternal world's design, is chosen by a secret witness eye and driven by a pointing hand of light across his soul's unmapped immensitudes. A pilgrim of the everlasting truth, our measures cannot hold his measureless mind. He has turned from the voices of the narrow realm and left the little lane of human time. In the hushed precincts of a vaster plan, he treads the vestibules of the unseen, or listens following a bodiless guide to a lonely cry in boundless vacancy. All the deep cosmic murmur falling still, he lives in the hush before the world was born, his soul left naked to the timeless one. Far from the compulsion of created things, thought and its shadowy idols disappear. The molds of form and person are undone. The ineffable wideness knows him for its own. A lone forerunner of the Godward earth, among the symbols of yet unshaped things, watched by closed eyes, mute faces of the unborn, he journeys to meet the incommunicable. Hearing the echo of his single steps in the eternal courts of solitude, a nameless marvel fills the motionless hours. His spirit mingles with eternity's heart and bears the silence of the infinite. His spirit mingles with eternity's heart and bears the silence of the infinite. In a divine retreat from mortal thought, in a prodigious gesture of soul sight, his being towered into pathless heights, naked of its vesture of humanity. As thus it rose to meet him bare and pure, a strong descent leaped down, a might, a flame, a beauty half visible with deathless eyes. And so again he has another descent, of course. This is of the next stage of his spiritual transformation. Another descent happens, again which is being described. A strong descent leaped down, a might, a flame, a beauty half visible, with deathless eyes, a violent ecstasy, a sweetness dire, enveloped him with its stupendous limbs, and penetrated nerve and heart and brain, that thrilled and fainted with the epiphany. His nature shuddered in the unknown's grasp, in a moment shorter than death, longer than time, by a power more ruthless than love, happier than heaven, taken sovereignly into eternal arms, hailed and coerced by a stark absolute bliss, in a whirlwind circuit of delight and force, hurried into unimaginable depths, upborne into immeasurable heights, it was torn out from its mortality and underwent a new and boundless change. So this is when what was torn out? This is very important. In this second descent that happens to Ashwapati, his mortality, his mortal nature, his human nature has been torn out from its roots. That means that he has, it's an unbelievable experience if Sri Aurobindo must have gone through, if this is what he's written here. After the first descent of force, the second descent actually prepares him, after the first descent, it prepares him to receive the eternal consciousness in his human nature. That means his human nature has been torn out. Now when he says mortality, what is mortal in us? What dies in us, tell me? The ego. So, and the ordinary human nature, that is that all that is, okay, let's continue with this. A power more ruthless than love, happier than heaven, taken sovereignly into eternal arms, hailed and coerced by a stark absolute bliss, in a whirlwind circuit of delight and force, hurried into unimaginable depths, upborne into immeasurable heights, it was torn out from its mortality and underwent a new and bournless change. An omniscient knowing, what is this change? An omniscient knowing, without sight or thought, an indecipherable omnipotence, a mystic form that could contain the worlds, yet make one human breast its passionate shrine, drew him out of his seeking loneliness into the magnitudes of God's embrace, as when a timeless eye annuls the hours, abolishing the agent and the act, so now his spirit shone out, wide, blank, pure. His wakened mind became an empty slate on which the universal and soul could write. All that represses our fallen consciousness was taken from him like a forgotten load. All that represses our fallen consciousness was taken from him like a forgotten load. A fire that seemed the body of a god consumed the limiting figures of the past and made large room for a new self to live. So new consciousness broke in. Eternity's contact broke the molds of sense. So even the molds of sense, the 5 senses, the 7 senses, a greater force than the earthly held his limbs, huge workings bared his undiscovered sheets. Strange energies wrought and screened tremendous hands. This is an absolutely brilliant passage of pure description of his own personal spiritual experiences of a level that, we cannot even fathom, because we are still tied to the earthly sense, the mortality, and we can't imagine we can only imagine what this could be, but we really can't fully understand it. Just want to read it a little in advance and then we'll take it up more. And of course his record of yoga can give you some glimpse of the preparation that would have taken. So, a greater force than the earthly held his limbs. Huge workings bared his undiscovered sheaths. Strange energies wrought and screened tremendous hands. Unwound the triple cord of mind. What is the triple cord of mind that he's referring to here? That was unwound in Ashwapati, removed. Unwound the triple cord of mind and freed the heavenly wideness of a Godhead's gaze. So the triple cord of mind refers to the mental, vital, physical mind. The heavenly wideness of a Godhead's gaze. As through a dress the wearer's shape is seen, there reached through forms to the hidden absolute, a cosmic feeling and transcendent sight. Increased and heightened were the instruments. Illusion lost her aggrandizing lens, as from her failing hand the measures fell, atomic looked the things that loomed so large. The little ego's ring could join no more. So, Ashwapati's ego, or the ego self, was completely annihilated, could join no more. The little ego's ring could join no more, and in the enormous spaces of the self, the body now seemed only a wandering shell. His mind, the many frescoed outer court of an imperishable inhabitant. His spirit breathed a superhuman air. The imprisoned deity rent its magic fence, as with the sound of thunder and of seas, vast barriers crashed around the huge escape. So the imprisoned deity rent means broke its magic fence, the fence of the ego, and the inhabitant, which is the divine inhabitant, came forward and occupied the entire body of Ashwapati. And Ashwapati's body then became like a wandering shell of this absolute. Just imagine Sri Aurobindo's experience. The body now seemed only a wandering shell. His mind, the many frescoed outer court of an imperishable inhabitant. His spirit breathed a superhuman air. The imprisoned deity rent its magic fence, as with the sound of thunder and of seas, vast barriers crashed around the huge escape. Immutably coeval with the world, circle and end of every hope and toil, inexorably drawn round thought and act, the fixed, immovable peripheries effaced themselves beneath the incarnate's dread. The dire velamen and the bottomless crypt, between which life and thought forever move. The dire velamen, what is the dire velamen? V-A-L-A-M-E-N, what does velamen mean? Just check, I'm not sure. The dire velamen and the bottomless crypt, between which life and thought forever move, forbidden still to cross the dim dread bounds. The guardian darkness is mute and formidable, empowered to circumscribe the wingless spirit in the boundaries of mind and ignorance, protecting no more a dual eternity, vanished, rescending the enormous rule. So this outer layer empty cells in aerial roots. Aerial roots. Yeah, hanging down. So what he's saying is, the guardian darkness is mute and formidable, empowered to circumscribe the wingless spirit in the boundaries of mind and ignorance, protecting no more a dual eternity, vanished, rescinding their enormous role. So who vanished? What vanished? These guardian darknesses that were given the empowered to circumscribe, in the boundaries of mind and ignorance. So keep the ignorance as a protecting veil. These darknesses vanished, protecting no more a dual eternity, vanished, rescinding their enormous role. Once figure of creation's vain ellipse, the expanding zero lost its giant curve. So once figure of creation's vain ellipse, the expanding zero lost its giant curve. The old adamantine vetoes stood no more. So these old laws, the iron laws of mortality, of death and ignorance and all of that, inconscience, those stood no more. Adamantine laws stood no more against Ashwapati. The old adamantine veto stood no more. Because every time human beings try and overreach, these powers veto and say, no, go back to your circumscribed self. So the old adamantine veto stood no more. Overpowered were earth and nature's obsolete rule. The python coils of the restricting law could not restrain the swift arisen God, abolished were the scripts of destiny. There was no small death-hunted creature more. There was no small death-hunted creature more. So there was no, like we are always, all the time being hunted. We are death-hunted creatures. So there in Ashwapati, there was no small death-hunted creature more. No fragile form of being to preserve from an all-swallowing immensity. The great hammer beats of a pent-up world heart burst open the narrow dams that keep us safe. Please note this. The great hammer beats of a pent-up world heart burst open the narrow dams that keep us safe. Because these also, there is a safety in our ignorance. If we are completely open to the universal energies, it would swallow us. We would not be able to bear their force. It would crush us. It would be unbearable, the ecstasy, and so on. So therefore, it's in a way, ego is also a safety put upon human nature till it begins to outgrow itself. So is ignorance, all forms of ignorance. Because if we had knowledge, a lot of people say if human beings could know every single thing that was to happen to them in advance, a lot of people would not be able to bear it or to be able to accept it. So therefore, this shroud of ignorance is there. And that is a way of keeping us safe. So the great hammer beats of a pent-up world heart burst open the narrow dams that keep us safe against the forces of the universe. The soul and cosmos faced as equal powers. A boundless being in a measureless time invaded nature with the infinite. So who was this boundless being in a measureless time that invaded nature with the infinite? He saw unpathed, unwalled, his titan scope. So there, Ashwapati, a boundless being in a measureless time, invaded nature with the infinite. He saw unpathed, unwalled his titan scope. All was uncovered to his seedless eye, a secret nature, stripped of her defense. Once in a dreaded half-light formidable, overtaken in her mighty privacy, lay bare to the burning splendor of his will. In shadowy chambers lit by a strange sun, an opening hardly to hid mystic keys, her perilous arcanes and hooded powers confessed the advent of a mastering mind and bore the compulsion of a time-born gaze. Incalculable in their wizard moods, immediate and invincible in the act, her secret strengths, native to greater worlds, lifted above her needy limited scope, the occult privilege of demigods, and the sure power pattern of her cryptic signs, her diagrams of geometric force, her potencies of marvel-fraught design, courted employment by an earth-nursed might, a conscious nature's quick machinery, armed with a latent splendor of miracle, the profit passion of a seeing mind. So this was all uncovered to his sealless eyes. The seals from Ashwapati's eyes were removed. The ignorance was removed. Everything was his sense, everything was cleared. He saw everything which was otherwise unseeable, unknown, and veiled from mortal sight because of the fact of the ego and ignorance. And then he sees all this, a secret nature stripped of her defense, lay bare to the burning splendor of whose will? Of Ashwapati's will. Her perilous arcanes and hooded powers confessed the advent of a mastering mind, new mind, and bore the compulsion of a time-born gaze. So her secret strengths native to greater worlds lifted above our needy limited scope the occult privilege of demigods and the sure bar pattern of her cryptic signs, her diagrams of geometric force, her potency of marvel-fraught design, courted employment by an earth-nursed might, her conscious nature's quick machinery, armed with the latent splendor of miracle, the prophet passion of a seeing mind, and the lightning bareness of a free soul force. All once impossible deemed could now become a natural limb of possibility. So all that seemed impossible, now when Ashwapati's sight was opened, his inner senses were no longer governed by the laws of ignorance and the laws of mortality and the iron laws of the old consciousness. He could see that whatever was impossible was possible, became a natural limb of possibility, a new domain of normalcy supreme. And that became quite normal, a new domain of normalcy supreme. An almighty occultist erects in space this seeming outward world which tricks the sense, and then he sees, then he realizes actually it is an almighty occultist, it is the supreme occultist, the supreme absolute that erects in space this seeming outward world, this outward world which tricks the sense. Which sense? Our five senses. But actually it is something else. We are tricked into. So it's a wonderful thing. You realize that this has actually been created by an almighty supreme occultist, who has erected in space and time this seeming outward world which tricks the sense. He weaves his hidden threads of consciousness. He builds bodies for his shapeless energy. Out of the unformed and vacant vast, he has made his sorcery of solid images. So he actually builds these bodies for his shapeless energy out of the unformed and vacant vast. He has made his sorcery of solid images. His magic of formative number and design. His magic of what? Formative number and design. So the fixed, irrational links none can annul. This crisscross tangle of invisible laws, his infallible rules, his covered processes achieve unerringly an inexplicable creation, where our error carves dead frames of knowledge for a living ignorance. In her mysteries moods, divorced from the Maker's laws, she too, as sovereignly creates her field. Who? Nature. She is, in her mysteries moods, divorced from the Maker's laws, she too as sovereignly creates her field, her will shaping the undetermined vasts, making a finite of infinity. So nature herself from infinity creates finiteness. She also is the creator. In her mysteries moods, divorced from the Maker's laws, she too as sovereignly creates her own field of creation, her will shaping the undetermined vasts, making a finite of infinity. She too can make an order of her caprice, as if her rash superb wagered to outweigh the veiled Creator's cosmic secrecies. Now, what does this mean? So, as though she wagers, she bets that she can out-create the Creator's cosmic secrecies, as if her rash, superb wagered, unusual words here, as if her rash, superb wagered to outweigh the veiled Creator's cosmic secrecies. The rapid footsteps of her fantasy, amid whose falls wonders like flowers rise, are surer than reason, defter than device, and swifter than imagination's wings. All she new fashions by the thought and word, compels all substance by her wand of mind. Mind is a mediator divinity. Its powers can undo all nature's work. Mind can suspend or change earth's concrete law. Now here, mind is a mediator divinity, mind with a capital M. It's not our mind that he's talking about. He's talking about the universal mind, from where our mind comes, the origin of mind. Mind is a mediator divinity. Mediator divinity, its powers can undo all nature's work. Mind can suspend or change earth's concrete law. Affranchised from earth, habit's drowsy seal, the leaden grip of matter it can break. So mind can break the leaden, like the dead grip of matter. It can break, indifferent to the angry stare of death. It can immortalize a moment's work, a simple fiat of its thinking force. This is mind. Now then she comes to mind, the narrator describes how mind works. Mind is a mediator divinity. Its powers can undo all nature's work. So mind has a power to undo all nature's work. Obviously, mind is a higher force of consciousness and of energy, and therefore it can undo nature's work. Mind can suspend or change earth's concrete law. So the laws of the earth can be suspended or changed by mind. And you can see how that happens, suspended when those who do levitation, who live without eating or breathing, or there are so many miracles that we see even in human beings. These are all ways of the mind over matter. So here Ashwapati is being shown, and how the different layers of consciousness work in nature. And he says that mind has the only one that can suspend or change earth's concrete law, affranchised from earth habit's drowsy seal, the leaden grip of matter it can break. Indifferent to the angry stare of death, it can immortalize a moment's work. So you can see how mind can immortalize a moment's work, whether it's an art or poetry or a book or an invention. A simple fiat of its thinking force, the casual pressure of its slight assent, can liberate the energy, dumb and pent, within its chambers of mysterious trance. So it makes the body sleep, a puissant arm, hold still the breath, the beatings of the heart. So here is a reference to all the miraculous thing that mind can do. It can, what can it do? It makes the body sleep also, a puissant arm, hold still the breath, the beatings of the heart, while the unseen is found, the impossible done, communicates without means the unspoken thought. So it is mind that can communicate, clairvoyance, clairaudience, what all? You know what clairvoyance means? To hear sound, to see, So all of this mind, the power of the mind can do. And it has a great power over matter. So hold still the breath, the beatings of the heart, while the unseen is found, the impossible done, communicates without means the unspoken thought. It moves events by its bare silent will. So mind can even change, it can move events by its bare silent will. That means if you have a mastery over the mind, you can even change the course of events. So you saw how Sri Aurobindo, when it mattered most, and there was a chance that Hitler might win the war against Britain, England, he used his mental force sitting in Pondicherry, because his great powers of mind, to create a kind of a fog situation where when the German naval military force came into the harbour, into England, there was a particular place, they could not see where the enemy was because a huge fog suddenly descended. And even till today, historians have described it without understanding. It was so unusual that it was such a clear, bright day that where did this fog arrive from? And this fog is what, mist and fog, allowed the British to capture the German army. And that is how the war turned and Hitler was defeated. Yes, Mahabharata, Krishna did that when kill. Yeah, he didn't allow the sun to set. Yes, he delayed it. So these things can happen. These are very normal things for people who have great control over their occult powers and have developed a high level of mental mastery. But even you and I, we can do it in our own way. If you look back, there may be instances where you have applied your mental thought, your power of mind, to change circumstances, to make something that could go into a bad situation, to change it, or to create a good, positive result. So, mind over matter. So there's a power of mind that he's describing here. It makes the body sleep a puissant arm, holds still the breath, the beatings of the heart, while the unseen is found, the impossible done. Communicates without means the unspoken thought. It moves events by its bare, silent will, acts at a distance, without hands or feet. This giant ignorance, this dwarfish life, it can illumine with a prophet's sight. So this giant ignorance, this life, vital force, life as it is, it can illumine with a prophet's sight, invoke the Bacchic rapture, the furies goad, in our body arouse the demon or the god. Call in the omniscient and omnipotent, awake a forgotten all mightiness within. In its own plane, a shining emperor. In its own plane, mind is a shining emperor. Even in this rigid realm, mind can be king. Even in this rigid realm of matter, mind with a capital M, not our small puny outer mind. It talks about the mind proper. Mind can be king. The logic of its demigod idea with a capital I, the logic of its demigod idea in the leap of a transitional moment brings surprises of creation never achieved, even by matter's strange unconscious skill. So, in the leap of a transitional moment brings surprises of creation never achieved. All these new creations that you see, the new inventions, that are all done by mind. Who would know that you did not need a telephone to speak and a mobile could suffice? Or who would have thought that you don't need a CD player or a tape recorder, but you can do it with a little disc? And over time, as we go in the next 20 years, we may not even need a mobile or a SIM card to play music. You can hear music. You can decide which track you want to play. If your mind is properly trained, you can decide, I want to listen to this music now. That music will stream. Even this will become obsolete. What? The mobile and the music, which is done through what? Those pen drives or whatever you call them, yes? And then what else would you not require? All recordings are there already. If you want to listen to anything, you can just download. Download where? Not into your computer, into your mind. These are the possibilities. And Sri Aurobindo has written a lot about it in Savitri. There are passages and passages of it, where he says that the next thing is a telepathic mind, clairvoyance, they'll become very ordinary. You will not think there is something special. Everybody will have it. I mean, everybody means anybody who has a developed, educated mind, trained mind. So if you can, even now, many people have trained their mind, who can see from afar, who can hear from clairaudience, can hear something that is being said somewhere else, in another country, right? And so on. Influence events, all of these things can happen. So, or can listen to other people's thoughts. So many people have that. So these are capacities of the mind that can be easily developed. All of us have it. Even now, sometimes thought comes and you know that, oh, this thought has come from this person. Or this thought or this idea has come from this person. Or this person wants a particular thing because you hear it. I mean, even we can hear it, okay? So these are not difficult things. You can all train yourselves to become conscious. The more conscious you become in your consciousness, you're more conscious of what is happening to you, the more you can become one. Like anybody who came in front of the mother, she knew immediately. The person did not need to tell her, I have this problem, or I need this. The deepest thoughts were immediately communicated to her, but she also knew the hidden thoughts. That means even the person wasn't aware of what the real need was, but these are very, very these are going to happen in the next, I think, 20 to 30 years. Young children, if you notice, they have an intuitive ability. Have you noticed that? Those who work with children, have you noticed? So, these are powers that are coming into humankind. While the unseen has found the impossible done, communicates without means the unspoken thought, it moves events by its bare silent will, acts at a distance without hands or feet. This giant ignorance, this dwarfish life, it can illumine with a prophet's sight. Invoke the Bacchic rapture, the furious goad, in our body arouse the demon or the god. Call in the omniscient and omnipotent, awake a forgotten almightiness within. In its own plane a shining emperor. Even in this rigid realm, mind can be king, the logic of its demigod idea. Please note, the mind is being referred to here as a demigod. What is a demigod? He has great powers, half human, half God. So this is what creates why human beings are called closer to God and above the animal, is the mind that separates the human beings from the animals. If the mind wasn't there, human beings would be similar to. So, even in this rigid realm, mind can be king. That's why I remember, and I keep telling all of you, develop your mind. Nirodha used to keep telling me when I was very young, I used to go to the ashram. First you develop your mind, discrimination. Learn to discriminate between true and false, between what is right and what is wrong, and see. And more you develop your mind through thinking, through reading, through deliberation, through contemplation, through meditation, through trusting your intuitions, writing down your thoughts and seeing that are they true or not, going back to them later. And the more you make your mind more cultured. How do you make your mind more cultured? By not following your emotional being, your vital being. All our vital beings are savages. It's like a very, very crude and very uncivilized force, the vital, emotional being. So what is the emotional being? What higher quality? Yes, but how will you develop it without the mind? Vital can't develop it. So it will be the mind that helps you to develop those qualities. So of course it will affect the mind because you are cultivating your mind. Gratitude, harmony, not picking up a fight, not getting upset easily. All these things, not quarreling, being more calm. All these are very, very high cultivation, of qualities. So these are the things that can develop your mind. The mind can control the vital and can sublimate the vital. So through the mind, the vital energies can be controlled. Now, some people, they get so anxious quickly. Smallest thing happens, they're very worried, very upset. Now these are things when your mind is not developed. If this happens to you, so you have to become conscious. That you have to realize, oh, my mind is not developed. That is why I'm getting constantly upset at small things. Then what you do is you apply your mind on your vital being and say, no, calm down. I'm not going to listen to you. First I'm going to step back. Then I'm going to decide in calmness. So that is how you slowly, your mind becomes the master of your vital energies. You have to understand the vital is a very strong life force which is ignorant by its very nature. So jumping to conclusions, before you can find out whether something is, who has done something or who has said something, you first attack that person. Or you first jump, in your mind you think that person has done it or that thing has done it. Then you go and, you don't say, oh wait, let me find out who has done it, what is the facts. All of us have it. It's not something peculiar to one person and not there another person. We all have these because the same vital energy, which is a universal vital energy, runs through all of us, all human beings. So when this vital energy becomes uncontrolled or becomes too strong, then the mind is unable to control it. Then you fall into error and confusion and ignorance, and you make terrible mistakes. So that is why Sri Aurobindo, even in the early sadhaks who came to the ashram, he did not tell them, oh, you go and meditate. He said, no, read, learn French, learn Spanish, read the original works, read Homer, read the Iliad. So he cultivated their mind. He gave reading of books, from cultivating the mind through doing things, through work. Work is the best way to cultivate the mind, because the more you work, the more you are in touch with other people. And also you have to concentrate your energies for a particular output. So that concentration of energies develops your mind. So, but work not done unconsciously, work done consciously. But nothing like reading. That habit of reading, contemplation and becoming conscious is very important. Those who don't read will never have a cultured mind. Must read. You understand? I don't know why, but reading really develops the mind. Because it is a quiet, I suppose, activity. So, no, that has still very strong, it's too strong. So, or get into a fight, or I mean, look at what's happening. Every day we read in the newspaper. Somebody was honking her car, a fellow caught her and slapped her. And I mean, this is a very animal response to a very uncivilized mind. So these people are, they're working from the vital mind is very, very strong. What you call as the reptilian mind, what we have studied. Yeah. What is the word? Amygdala, yeah. So that's the more biological rational. Yeah. The reason gets obscured. This is, of course, the very crude way. And then as you go further, you also have a culture of the mind. That is done through art, through music, through beauty, through appreciation of these things, through sensitivity to animals, to flowers, to plants, to things that are, you have dominance over. People you are dominating, you have a dominant over. To be kind, compassionate, thoughtful, all these are qualities of the higher mind, you can say. So I think that, this is a whole culture. That is actually the reason we go to school, and the purpose of education is this cultivation of the mind and the consciousness and the cultivation of the higher qualities of the vital, which can only happen through the mind. See, the vital by itself can't control itself. You understand? If we want to control our emotions, whether it's anger or depression or negativity, whatever it might be, you can't do it through that part that is the emotional being. That is already, too strong. So it has to come from a higher plane. That is the reason, first the reason, then the higher plane of consciousness of the mind. There are higher planes and higher planes. So as your mind evolves, you can reach to a higher mind of light, the intuitive mind, the illumined mind, or or silencing the mind, quietening the mind, can be done in many ways. Okay. So, here, of course, we are reading about the yoga of Ashwapati, and how, when he enters into these planes, he becomes a master of nature's secrets. Okay? So, Even in this rigid realm, mind can be king. The logic of its demigod idea, in the leap of a transitional moment, brings surprises of creation never achieved, even by matter's strange unconscious skill. All's miracle here, and can by miracle change. This is that secret nature's edge of might. On the margin of great immaterial plains, in kingdoms of an untrammeled glory of force, where mind is master of life and form, and soul fulfills its thoughts by its own power, she meditates upon mighty words and looks on the unseen links that join the parted spheres. So this is that secret nature's edge of might. On the margin of great immaterial plains and kingdoms of an untrammeled glory of force, where mind is master of the life and form, and soul fulfills its thoughts by its own power, she meditates upon mighty words and looks on the unseen links that join the parted spheres. Thence to the initiate who observes her laws. Whose laws? Nature's. Thence to the initiate who observes her laws, she brings the light of her mysterious realms. Here where he stands, his feet on a prostrate world, his mind no more cast into matter's mold, over their bounds in spurts of splendid strength, she carries their magician processes and the formulas of their stupendous speech, till heaven and hell become purveyors of two earths, and the universe the slave of mortal will. Right? So she here refers to nature. When one begins to uncover the secrets of nature, then one can realize the process in which nature operates, and the human will, the mortal will, can begin to understand and change the matter's laws, and then create what is called a miracle. That is what a miracle is. So, here where he stands, his feet on a prostrate world, his mind no more cast into matter's mold, over their bounds and spurts of splendid strength, she carries their magician processes and the formulas of their stupendous speech, till heaven and hell become purveyors to earth. Purveyors to earth means they help, the purveyors, those purveyors that take, till heaven and hell become purveyors to earth, and the universe the slave of mortal will. A mediatrix with veiled and nameless gods, whose alien will touches our human life, imitating the world magician's ways, she invents for her self-bound free will its grooves, and feigns for magic's freaks a binding cause. All worlds she makes the partners of her deeds, accomplices of her mighty violence, her daring leaps into the impossible. From every source she has taken her cunning means. She draws from the free love marriage of the plains elements for her creation's tour de force, a wonder weft of knowledge incalculable, a compendium of divine inventions, feats, she has combined to make the unreal true, or liberate suppressed reality. In an unhedged Circean wonderland, pell-mell she shepherds her occult mightinesses, her mnemonics of the craft of the infinite, jets of the screened subliminal's caprice, tags of the gramarye of inconscience, freedom of a sovereign truth without a law, thoughts that were born in the immortal's world, oracles that break out from behind the shrine, warnings from the demonic inner voice, and peeps and lightning leaps of prophecy, and intimations to the inner ear. Abrupt interventions, stark and absolute, and the superconscious unaccountable acts have woven her balanced web of miracles and the weird technique of a tremendous art. This bizarre kingdom passed into his charge. This bizarre kingdom, what this whole description of this kingdom of passed into his charge means he became a master of. Who became? Ashwapati. This bizarre kingdom where all of this world magician, nature's craft, mnemoniacs and so on, all of this became his, passed into his charge. As one resisting more the more she loves, her great possessions and her power and law, she gave, compelled with a reluctant joy. Herself she gave for rapture and for use. Absolved from aberrations in deep ways, the end she recovered for which she was made. She turned against the evil she had helped. Her engine wrought, her invisible means to slay, her dangerous moods and arbitrary force. She surrendered to the service of the soul and the control of a spiritual will. So all of this, she gave without wanting to give. She gave to Ashwapati all her secrets and all her powers and her secret way of working, and therefore she gave compelled with a reluctant joy. Herself she gave for rapture and for use. Absolved from aberrations in deep ways, the end she recovered for which she was made. She turned against the evil she had helped. Her engine wrought, her invisible means to slay, her dangerous moods and arbitrary force. She surrendered to the service of the soul and the control of a spiritual will. Whose will? Whose spiritual will? Ashwapati's spiritual. She surrendered. So nature became Ashwapati's servitor. A greater despot tamed her despotism, assailed, surprised in the fortress of herself, conquered by her own unexpected king, fulfilled and ransomed by her servitude. She yielded in a vanquished ecstasy. Her sealed, hermetic wisdom forced from her fragments of the mystery of omnipotence. So nature gave up all her secrets to Ashwapati. So this is his yoga. That's how he can change earth's laws and bring down Savitri. How can you bring down the Divine Mother, the Divine Consciousness, a whole higher consciousness without first being a complete master of everything on earth? A border sovereign is the occult force. So the occult force with a capital F, a border sovereign is the occult force. A threshold guardian of the earth's scenes beyond, she has canalized the outbreaks of the gods and cut through vistas of intuitive sight a long road of shimmering discoveries. The worlds of a marvelous unknown were near. Behind her, an ineffable presence stood. Her reign received their mystic influences. Their lion forces crouched beneath her feet. The future sleeps unknown behind their doors. Abysms infernal gaped round the soul's steps and called to its mounting vision peaks divine. An endless climb and adventure of the idea there tirelessly tempted the explorer mind, and countless voices visited the charmed ear. 1,000,000 figures passed and were seen no more. This was the forefront of God's thousandfold house, beginnings of the half-screened invisible. A magic porch of entry glimmering quivered in a imagery of a house and how he's describing through that. This was the forefront of God's thousandfold house. Beginnings of the half-screened invisible, how it comes out. A magic porch of entry, which you can see glimmering, quivered in a penumbra of screened light, a court of the mystical traffic of the worlds, a balcony and miraculous facade. Above her lightened high immensities, all the unknown looked out from boundlessness. It lodged upon an edge of hourless time, gazing out of some everlasting now, its shadows gleaming with the birth of gods, its bodies signaling the bodiless, its foreheads glowing with the oversoul, its forms projected from the unknowable, its eyes dreaming of the ineffable, its faces staring into eternity. Life in him learned its huge subconscious rare. Life in whom? Ashwapati learned its huge subconscious rare. The little fronts unlocked to the unseen vasts. Her gulf stood nude. Whose gulfs? All of nature. That means the secrets of nature, Mother Nature, of Prakriti, of Paraprakriti, of all nature stood. Her gulf stood nude. That means he was able to penetrate into the deepest mysteries, the power, the secrets, of nature, and also have control and mastery over her. Not just understand and see, but also be able to be the greater despot. So a greater despot, the nature herself is despotic, and she herself is strong and masterful. But because of the inner king, because his soul had become one with the divine soul, he was able to have a greater mastery over nature. So the little fronts unlocked to the unseen vast, her gulf stood nude, her far transcendences flamed in transparencies of crowded light. Beautiful poetry. Of course, this is the yoga of Ashwapati that we are reading, and how he's entering into realms and realms, and has in this section, it starts with all was uncovered to his sealless eye, page 83, a secret nature stripped of her defense. So this is the secret nature that he is entering, once in a dreaded half-light formidable, overtaken in her mighty privacy, and so on. And then he discovers the diagrams of her geometric force, her potencies of marble design, and so on, for seeing mind. And this continues on till where we are, where it ends, where flamed in transparencies of crowded light. Life in him learned its huge and subconscious rare, because you see, life in him, he could see in life the subconscious, the superconscious, and the conscious. And in himself also he discovered his own subconscious, which is one with the subconscious of nature of the world. So that's how life in him learned its huge subconscious rare because the subconscious is below and behind. The little fronts unlocked to the unseen vasts. The little fronts, her gulf stood nude, her far transcendences. So both the gulfs, subconscious and far transcendences, the superconscious, stood open and nude before Ashwapati, flamed in transparencies of crowded light. A giant order was discovered here, of which the tassel and extended fringe are the scant stuff of our material lives. So this giant order that Ashwapati discovered here was only the tassel and the tassel, the end of the tassel and extended fringe of what? Are the scant stuff of our material lives are only the tassel and the fronts and the fringe of it. The rest of it is all hidden, which is what Ashwapati enters and discovers. It's not overt. So it's not in front, it's underneath. This overt universe, that is our universe, the earth, this overt universe whose figures hide the secrets merged in superconscious light. So this universe, this earth, or this entire universe hides the figures, those figures that are merged in superconscious light. So there's so much behind, so much above. This overt universe whose figures hide the secrets merged in superconscious light wrote clear the letters of its glowing code. A map of subtle signs, surpassing thought, was hung upon a wall of inmost mind. So here, these secrets were written on a map of subtle signs which surpassed thought and was hung upon a wall of inmost mind, illumining the world's concrete images into significant symbols by its gloss. It offered to the intuitive exegete. What does that mean? The word? Exegete? Can anyone check? Interpreter. So it offered to the intuitive exegete its reflex of the eternal mystery, ascending and descending twixt life's poles. What are the life's poles? Ascending and descending twixt in between life's poles, the serried kingdoms of the graded law, plunged from the everlasting into time, then glad of a glory of multitudinous mind, and rich with life's adventure and delight, and packed with the beauty of matter's shapes and hues, climb back from time into undying self, up a golden ladder carrying the soul, tying with diamond threads the spirit's extremes, in this drop from consciousness to consciousness, each leaned on the occult inconscious power, the fountain of its needed ignorance, arc mason of the limits by which it lives. So, of course, very mystery, very sort of mystical language here, in rich symbolism. So, ascending and descending twixt life's poles, the serried kingdoms of the graded law, plunge from the everlasting into time, then glad of a glory of multitudinous mind and rich with life's adventure and delight and packed with the beauty of matter's shapes and hues, climb back from time into undying self, up a golden ladder carrying the soul, tying with diamond threads the spirit's extremes, in this drop from consciousness to consciousness, each leaned on the occult inconscious power, the fountain of its needed ignorance, arc mason of the limits by which it lives. In this soar from consciousness to consciousness, each lifted tops to that from which it came, origin of all that it had ever been, and home of all that it could still become. An organ scale of the Eternal's acts, mounting to their climax in an endless calm, bases of the many-visaged wonderful, predestined stadia of the evolving way, measures of the stature of the growing soul. They interpreted existence to itself and mediating twixt the heights and deeps, are united the veiled, married opposites, and linked creation to the ineffable. A last high world was seen, where all worlds meet. In its summit gleam where night is not, nor sleep. The light began of the Trinity Supreme. The Trinity Supreme? The light began of the Trinity Supreme. All there discovered what it seeks for here. It freed the finite into boundlessness and rose into its own eternities. The inconscient found its heart of consciousness, the idea and feeling groping in ignorance, at last clutched passionately the body of truth. The music born in matter's silences, plucked nude out of the ineffable's fathomlessness, the meaning it had held but could not voice. The music born in matter silences, plucked nude out of the ineffable's fathomlessness, the meaning it had held but could not voice, the perfect rhythm now only sometimes dreamed, an answer brought to the torn earth's hungry need, rending the night that had concealed the unknown, giving to her her lost, forgotten soul. Giving to her, who's her here? Giving to her her lost, forgotten soul, nature, or the earth soul, you could say. Nature. See, the music born in matter's silences. And if you say, an answer brought to the torn earth's hungry need, rending the night that had concealed the unknown, giving to her, earth, her lost forgotten soul. A grand solution closed the long impasse in which the heights of mortal effort end. A reconciling wisdom looked on life. So, grand solution closed, the long impasse in which the heights of mortal effort end. A reconciling wisdom looked on life. It took the striving undertones of mind and took the confused refrain of human hopes and made of them a sweet and happy call. It lifted from an underground of pain the inarticulate murmur of our lives and found for it a sense illimitable, a mighty oneness, its perpetual theme. It caught the soul's faint scattered utterances, read hardly twixt our lines of rigid thought, or mid this drowse and coma on matter's breast, heard like disjointed mutterings in sleep. Uses this word twixt a lot here. Very not so much used in today's writing. Yes, twixt, between. But we don't use twixt in our modern language. So this he uses it a lot. I mean, somebody counted it. But even now, modern point, I don't see it being used much, except in Sri Aurobindo's writings. I mean, I think the most, even in his time, it was not used so much. Before that it was. In Tennyson's time, he uses it a lot. Shakespeare, but that is before his time. No. Yeah, from there. So in modern poetry, I don't see it being used, neither in modern verse, in prose. So a mighty oneness, its perpetual theme. It caught the soul's faint scattered utterances, read hardly twixt our lines of rigid thought, or mid this drowse and coma on matter's breast, heard like disjointed mutterings in sleep. It grouped the golden links that they had lost and showed to them their divine unity, saving from the error of divided self the deep spiritual cry in all that is. All the great worlds that toiled to express the one were lifted into an absoluteness of light. So all the great words that toiled to express the one were lifted into an absoluteness of light, an ever-burning revelation's fire, and the immortality of the eternal voice. There was no quarrel more of truth with truth. So obviously it was in that space and that consciousness that each truth reconciled with the other truth. There was no quarrel more of truth with truth. The endless chapter of their differences, retold in light by an omniscient scribe, traveled through difference towards unity. Mind's winding search lost every tinge of doubt, led to its end by an all-seeing speech that garbed the initial and original thought with the finality of an ultimate phrase. The united were time's creative mood and tense, to the style and syntax of identity. The paean swelled from the lost musing deeps, an anthem pealed to the triune ecstasies, a cry of the moments, the immortal's bliss. as if the strophes of a cosmic ode, a hierarchy of climbing harmonies, peopled with voices and with visages, aspired in a crescendo of the gods, from matter's abysses to the spirit's peaks. Right? As if the strophes of a cosmic ode, the strophes, a hierarchy of, it's a musical notation, as if the strophes of a cosmic ode, a hierarchy of climbing harmonies, peopled with voices and with visages, aspired in a crescendo of the gods, from matter's abysses to the spirit's peaks, above were the immortals' changeless seats, white chambers of dalliance with eternity, and the stupendous gates of the alone. Across the unfolding of the seas of self appeared the deathless countries of the One, a many-miracled consciousness, unrolled, vast aim and process and unfettered norms, a larger nature's great familiar roads, affranchised from the net of earthly sense. Calm continents of potency were glimpsed, homelands of beauty shut to human eyes, half seen at first, through wonder's gleaming lids, surprised the vision with felicity. Sunbelts of knowledge, moonbelts of delight, stretched out in an ecstasy of widenesses. So here, this is the highest plane before where the trinities sit. Ashwapati is reached. That plane which unifies all truths, which is the plane of the center, the plane what he calls as a supramental plane, before the Satchitananda. And in this plane, this is the description of what Ashwapati sees and experiences. Homelands of beauty, shut to human eyes, half seen at first, through wonder's gleaming lids, surprised the vision with felicity. Sunbelts of knowledge, moonbelts of delight, stretched out in an ecstasy of widenesses, beyond our indigent corporeal range. There he could enter, there a while abide, a voyager upon uncharted routes, fronting the viewless danger of the unknown, adventuring across enormous realms. He broke into another space and time. So he broke into another space and time. This is how Ashwapati enters into this new space and new time. End of Canto 5, end of Book 1, and the end of the description of Ashwapati's own, the yoga of the spirit's freedom and greatness, Ashwapati's yoga, which Sri Aurobindo calls the yoga of the spirit's greatness and freedom. So he becomes free of the binding corporeal, material nature. He is able to leave it behind and enter into higher and higher realms and gain higher and higher faculties of consciousness to be able to see and sense. And that's why this is the last canto before Book 2, which is the book of the traveler of the worlds. The next book is the description only. It's not easy to travel to all these worlds, which are the inner worlds and the higher worlds and the deeper worlds, from the inconscient world to the superconscient world, unless one has first mastered oneself and all one's senses and has been able to delve into the secret of nature. And all of this has happened. So this is what is the preparation that we have read for Book 2, which is the book of the traveler of the worlds, and Canto 1, which is the world's stair that Ashwapati climbs. And it is only then, when he's able to do that, that he actually is able to meet the Divine Mother, which is in the book of the Divine Mother, and have her a direct darshan or experience, and where he can ask for the boon of Savitri to come down on earth as the avatar and her representative, the Divine Mother's representative on earth. So, this is really how the sequence of the book runs and the narrative runs very clearly and very, in a sense, very logically. Of course, with a super logic, but you have to have the, like Mother says, you cannot understand Savitri from the mind or from the gray matter, gray cells of the mind. You have to grow new cells, new brain cells, which in golden, not gray, she calls it, golden cells. And when these new cells have grown into the mind and the brain, then only will Savitri and the words of Savitri be understood by human beings, because Savitri was not written from the ordinary human mind and its mentality, which is why some portions of Savitri, even today, are difficult for us to understand. And it is only natural that that is so, because we do not have the brain cells, the new consciousness of new brain cells to understand it. However, that is why, like all great scripture, which has to be read and reread and concentrated on like a mantra. And then Savitri reveals itself, because you and we also grow in our consciousness to be able to hear and understand Savitri each time from a deeper consciousness. So Savitri is so deep and so profound that even if we were to read it 500 times, we cannot claim that we understand it completely, because our consciousness has not reached that level of experience. But some sense of it, and that's why Mother said any time spent in reading Savitri, in the study of Savitri, in the atmosphere of Savitri, is a time not wasted. It's the only time you will not waste in your life. This 1 hour on Saturday. Why? Because it grows your consciousness from within, and these occult processes, without our knowing it, start happening in our own consciousness. The psychic being comes forward, strengthens, the inner being becomes strong. It's like when you feed a child or you feed yourself. Why do you feed yourself food? So that you become strong. You drink milk, you have your food, because your body needs the nourishment. Savitri is the nourishment for our soul. And we need to nourish our soul. It doesn't grow otherwise, it shrinks otherwise. Like our body will shrink if we don't give it food and water.